Hi, this is Portia Angel with Angel Conversations, and in this video, we are going to be talking about the experience of leaving church, what that's like, but ultimately what that really means. This video is for people who are going through this experience, who have been through this experience, who are looking for understanding and support in their experience. This video is not to bash and demonize people who are still in church, and this video is also not for people who are here to argue and debate and be combative. You will be blocked and deleted, okay? Check your spirit. Moving on, I felt impressed to share with people who are dealing with whatever they're dealing with that is leading them to want to exit the church. If it's been a feeling within you over time, my message to you is don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, because in my experience, which I will share my story in a second, it is an opportunity for you to truly discover God with all of the limits being taken off. I want to share as quickly as possible what transpired for me. Back in 2013, I got an inkling of a revelation that my exodus was going to be happening. I was a part of a very well-known mega church that I will not name, and there were some things that had taken place not only in this particular ministry, but in so many other ministries before that, things that just did not set well in my spirit about what was being taught, things that were being politicized, certain things that were going on behind the scenes, because I was one of the praise and worship leaders. And let me also say this, I am not someone who doesn't know what they're talking about. I was raised in the church. I had my first salvation experience when I was 7 years old, recommitted my life to Christ and dedicated myself again when I was 14 or 15 years old, and have been rocking steady and solid with God since. No, my journey spiritually has not been what I would have thought it would be, or what most religious mindsets would think is acceptable. But I know my relationship with God, and more importantly, God knows me. I'm his daughter, I'm his child. I went to seminary, was a theology student, studied not only the scriptures in church, but actually went to get formal education on them, okay? So there's a lot that comes in this bag of experience. I didn't just leave the church because somebody pissed me off, okay? Although there were moments like that, we're taught in Christianity to forgive, and I wholeheartedly believe in that message. One of the things, though, that I have come to understand is that when you're dealing with toxic Christianity, you are oftentimes subjected to the weaponizing of those messages to excuse and continue manipulative, narcissistic, dysfunctional, ignorant behavior. And that's one thing that I will not tolerate. I will not tolerate someone over a pulpit abusing their power, or someone over a pulpit knowing better but teaching something else so that they can control the people to get what they want. So I'm not going to say all churches make that their business and their number one priority, but I will say there are those churches that do. And just to be aware of that. When I started feeling like this pull apart, I was literally sitting on the pews, falling asleep spiritually. I remember it was almost like a feeling, a physical sensation, where I literally felt like I was being coaxed into a slumber. It literally felt like a massage in certain parts of my body when I would go. Like I was literally being lulled to sleep, and I wasn't growing. I wasn't experiencing revelation in God. I was just like, I need to shake this. What do I need to do? Where do I need to go? God, are you there? It's just like the word would be good when I would go sometimes, and other times it was just like, I'm just not getting what I feel I need here. And I started to feel that there was another level. One thing you will also get, people who haven't studied the Bible for themselves, or people who hear something and run with it or misinterpret certain things, they will throw that scripture in, do not forsake the assembly of the brethren. Don't forsake the assembly of gathering. And they limit that to a church building, not understanding that there was no church building in the early days of the quote unquote church. People were meeting underground. They were meeting in small groups, in circles. I don't even want to say that it was labeled Christianity at that time, but it wasn't even legalized. People were being killed for their faith. They were being killed for their association with Jesus. So what we consider as church and Christianity today, that was not the case back in the Bible days. It was legalized, and now people want to tote it around freely because they have a right to. But my question is, who would some of these people really be if they didn't have that legal right? I'm gonna leave that there. Anyway, my point is, when you have the chance to connect with other spiritual hearts that understand who and where you are, that know God for themselves, that is the assembly. That is the gathering together. Christ said, where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there I will be in the midst. Understanding what that truly can represent in your life. Anywho, back on track with my story. I knew at one particular point that it was going to be my last Sunday there. There was a statement made about the Trayvon Martin case. And after so many years of compounding drama, I was like, this is it. I'm done. And granted, I was upset and mad in that moment, but it had been a long time coming, and that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. And oddly enough, at that same time, I had career opportunities that had come. And crazily enough, the first one, while I was still a teacher, had me teaching SAT instruction on both days that services were happening at church, Sunday mornings and Wednesday evenings. At the time, I was still very heavily programmed into the ways of the church. You go to church. If it's not this church and you feel like you want to leave, well, what about another church? I was still at that point conflicted about like, well, God, what is happening? Because I need to be able to go and fellowship somewhere. But I'm like, what are you doing, God? Because now I'm like having to work, and that was my livelihood at that time. They switched my schedule. So that was further telling me, you're not going to be there, and you may not be anywhere for a while. And then when I switched careers, going from education into music and entertainment full time, I got called to go overseas, and I was out to sea as a cruise entertainer, and there was no church. There was no pastor that I could run to have pray for me. There was no prophet that I could receive a word from. And I knew at that moment, God was calling me to step up spiritually. God was calling me to become my own prayer warrior. God was calling me to become my own prophetic ear. God was calling me to be that for myself, so that when the opportunity arose and there was someone else who needed that I could step in those shoes and do what God was calling to be done. I knew that God was setting me up to be completely dependent and reliant on Him, period. And I use that word Him for lack of a better term because yeah, that's a whole nother video. But my point is, being called out of that environment was very scary at that point. But I also knew that God was with me. I knew that my relationship was not dependent upon the church, because when I dedicated my life to God, I wasn't in church. I was actually at home. I was actually watching something on TV and felt a strong pull to get on my knees and pray. And that began my close personal relationship with God. I was reminded of where it started and how it was going to continue. And God began to show me so many other things that were outside of the church, but that I knew were God, things that I would pray about. And I would see answers and words and messages come to me from all of these other different avenues. They were not churchy. They were not even religious per se. In fact, a lot of things that I became aware of and learned from and received from the church often demonized. They called it New Age. They called it the devil. People love to demonize what they don't understand, what they've not actually studied for themselves, or if they call themselves quote unquote studying, it already is from material and people that have an inherent bias to serve their denomination's interpretation. So anywho, what I can tell you is that if you are going through an experience, not saying that you're leaving God, because it was never that. My relationship actually got stronger. My spiritual gifts actually excelled and went off the Richter scale. because I didn't have somebody else that I was falling back on and depending upon. When God calls you to the forefront, when God is calling you to elevate and strengthen yourself spiritually, He will take away oftentimes all of the training wheels, all of the cushion, all of the people to strengthen you, to strengthen your knowing, your inner knowing, your spiritual relationship and connection between you guys. Just you and God. Because there are some things you're going to have to know that ain't nobody told you. There are some things you're going to have to elevate in that the church don't want you to elevate in. They think the power is in their validation of you, not knowing that God called you. So they can't cancel you. They can't cancel who God called. They can't kill who God already has plans to resurrect. So I'm here to tell you that if you feel led to leave, don't be afraid. The journey is literally just beginning. Know that you are not alone. It's like God is ultimately saying to you, now I can show you who I really am. I once heard it said that when you're ready to give up the church, that's when God is ready to give you the kingdom. The late Dr. Miles Monroe often said the greatest enemy to the kingdom of God is the church, is religion, is Christianity. And when I used to hear him say that back in my Christianese days, I never really understood that because I was like, oh, but baby, now I do. Because when you have been called to strip yourself of all the false identities of church, when you have been called to step away from the program of religious tradition, because see, oftentimes what supersedes God is what man behind a pulpit is telling you to do. God may tell you, I want you to go over here and do this. And because it don't make sense to them over there, they're going to tell you that's not God. And God is oftentimes saying, so who are you going to listen to? Me or man? It may not make sense to them. It may not even make sense to you, but will you trust God and follow God leading you? I can give you a laundry list of things that people did and places that people went in the Bible that did not make sense to the carnal mind. Even Jesus, when he was sent to be crucified, Peter, his own ride or die, came up and was like, yo, not on my watch, and started chopping people's ears off. And he even had to tell Peter, Satan, get thee behind me. You don't know what God has for me. You don't know the glory that's supposed to be revealed in me. You're trying to protect and save me when my salvation is not of you. It's of God. You know what I'm saying? There was a prophet who was told to marry a prostitute. Most people in the church, they would say, oh, you shouldn't do that. I could think of one or two people right now who married somebody who most church folk would have thought is a hoe. And because they recently got divorced, oh, that must not have been God. You don't know that. You don't know the mind of God. It says in Isaiah, for my ways are not your ways, nor are my thoughts your thoughts. For as the heavens are higher than you, than the earth, so are my ways beyond your comprehension. So when church people try to tell you something isn't God and you have a relationship with God for yourself and you know something is God, even if it means another direction for your life, walking away, trust it. Because now God can really show you the fullness of all you need to experience without limitations. Oftentimes when you're in church environments, you will experience a lot of what you can't do, where you can't go, who you can't associate with, what you can't see for yourself, what you can't experience. And we wonder why we're stuck in so many ways of our lives for those who are experiencing this, when God has been like, I've been telling you to shed this situation. I've been telling you to come out. I've been telling you to walk away, but you've been holding on to and staying stuck in this environment for fear. It's almost like anything else in life. It's time to graduate for some of you. It's time to graduate to another level. And because we don't know what that is, we get scared. I'm here to tell you once again, do not be afraid. Because the moment you leave and stop limiting yourself, the moment you can experience a life without limits. Church oftentimes will put God in a box, and that's the biggest thing I learned. You cannot put the formless in a category. You cannot sum up God and say who God is and what God is not. Shall the pottery, shall the art form tell the potter who the potter is? No. Don't be afraid to walk into the unknown, into the limitless experience that is waiting for you in God. Shed the environments that have restricted you so that you can truly know the fullness of who God is for yourself and experience another dimension of elevation, of potential, of power, of divinity in God. If this message is resonating with you, drop a comment below. Share the video if you feel it can be beneficial to somebody else. If you haven't subscribed, please do. I have more content coming out to elevate. Hit the notification bell so you know the next video that I release. And until the next video, I hope you stay safe, be blessed, and bye for now.